Welcome to UndocuStartup by Juan Maya Hernandez.
Well, thank you so much, Hanya. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I also want to give a quick thank you to Nicole for making this happen. And lastly, to every single one of you that was able to make it today. I know it's during the afternoon and some of us, it's summer, right? So just shout out to every single one of you as well. I will be talking a little bit around entrepreneurship, but I did want to start it off with a quick question. And feel free to either give me a thumbs up if this has ever happened to you, if this is something that you also deal with, because this is something that I dealt with myself. So my question to you all is, so how many of you feel like you have the skills, the talent, but you can't secure paid opportunities because of your status? Just you can give me a thumbs up, or you can also just put it in the chat if you feel this way. I just want to see how many other people feel this way. I see some thumbs up. I see a lot of me's. Okay. Thank you all so much for being so engaged. I really appreciate this. Somebody said they don't have many talents. No, I'm pretty sure you have some talents. But yeah, so I asked this question because this is actually what happened to me. So I'm actually based in California, and I'm an alumni from UCLA. But back in 2021, I didn't have DACA, and I went to this career fair and I tried landing a growth marketing internship, and I actually went as far as getting the interview. I was really close on getting hired, but unfortunately, because I didn't have DACA, I didn't have work authorization. You can see this email right here telling me that I wasn't able to get hired, right? But I've always been this person that is not about what happens to you, it's about how you sort of take this internally and what is it that you're going to do about it, right? So what did I do about it? I ended up launching different business ideas, different side hustles, and here are some of the ideas that I did when I was a student. I also want to say that a lot of my ideas have been around helping immigrants, helping DACA recipients, and I am a DACA recipient now, but you can see that I started with the hedge photography business, but I've launched business ideas anywhere from platforms to an agency that I tried, even to launching an entrepreneurship course for undocumented students last year. And today, like Hanya mentioned, I am the founder of UndocuStartup, and we are the leading entrepreneurship program for undocumented students. I started this in 2023 after I got denied my dream internship. And I've been lucky enough to be able to help over 180 undocumented students in California, help them build 30 plus business ideas. And we've given $5,000 in seed funding, and it's only the beginning, right? But everything that I tell you and everything that I've done has come from my personal experience. It's not something that I read. So I did 4 entrepreneurship programs when I was in college as well. I also, you can see right here, a picture of me at the office of the early investors of Grubhub, Giphy, and Snapchat. So I was able to get feedback from my own startup for this idea from some of these investors that were raising like $7 billion back then. So everything that I'm about to tell you just comes from my experience. It's not something that I read, right? But I did want to start with this. I also want you to, first and foremost, importantly, I want you to believe in yourself, because if I was able to do it, I'm not saying you're able to do it at the same scale, but every single one of you has talents that you can put and you can monetize, and you can get a job and create jobs for yourselves as well. All right. So, and most importantly, believe in yourself. That's the biggest thing at the very beginning. All right. You have to believe in yourself. That's important. All right. Now, let me ask you a question. So what actually comes to mind when you hear the word entrepreneurship? And feel free to put it in the chat. I want to read what do y'all know about entrepreneurship? What comes to mind when you hear entrepreneurship? Put it in the chat. I want to hear you all. Your own business, leadership, business owner. Okay. Own business. Okay. Leadership. Yeah, no, I love this. I love this. So when I would hear the term entrepreneurship when I was a student, I would hear this term of independent contracting. Give me a thumbs up if y'all have ever heard about this, or put it in the chat if you've ever heard independent contracting, at least that term on its own. Yeah, so back then it was really complicated for me to understand it. Now, after I started doing hedge photography, it's much simpler. So the way I define independent contracting is just there's a contract in between that outlines all the services you're going to do for somebody, and then there's two people, right? On one hand, there's the client. On the other hand, there's the person doing the service, and that's really all it is, right? So anytime that you want to do a service for somebody and there's a contract in between, you're doing independent contracting, right? And when you hear the term freelancing, that's also within the same realm of independent contracting. So that's one aspect of entrepreneurship. I also saw business owner in the chat. So thank you all so much for also including that. I also saw side hustles, which is another aspect of entrepreneurship. So if you guys have ever heard of this platform called OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace, one of the things that I do on the side is I resell old items that I no longer use. I resell the GoPro on OfferUp. I resold old shoes. And that's a great way for you to start just monetizing. And there's a lot of great people out there that are willing to buy reused items. So that's also another aspect of entrepreneurship. I'm sure you've also heard about this, and I know you also will have a speaker talking about their experience within this series around worker cooperatives. But really, a worker cooperative, just think of it like this. Let's say it's you and two other people trying to start a business, but none of you want to take all the responsibilities, do all the different deals, take all the responsibility. As a worker co-op, you and your three buddies or your two buddies, you can all have an equal say on what type of business you want to create, what type of clients you want to do, the pricing, and you each get paid the same. Whereas if you just wanted to be a business owner where you're the CEO, you call all the deals, you do all the stuff, and then you pay your employees. That's the biggest difference, I would say, between independent contracting, business ownership, and worker cooperative. So that's another one. And there's all these other ones as well that have come up, right? Digital products. Anytime you're selling anything online, you're building a digital product. A startup is just a company that's really, it's linear. And then 3-4 years down the line, they explode to 3-4 million. Startup companies are companies like OpenAI, ChatGPT, right? That created ChatGPT. Think of Giphy, think of Snapchat, think of Grubhub, think of Facebook, think of MySpace when it was popping back then. But most of these companies take investment from investors, so then later down the line they are able to sell the company or go public on the stock market. All right, so that's another example of entrepreneurship. Content Systems, do you guys know who this is? 120 undocumented students, 6 different states, one day to launch your business. We started UndocuStartup in California, but we knew that our impact had to go in more than one state. So introducing the UndocuStartup Tour, we are bringing our flagship entrepreneurship bootcamp to 6 different states for the next few months.
$26 in investment.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we also got one client.
Like last minute, I send messages to the people I know, and I just got sent 60.
Ooh. There's only 120 spots, so apply now at www.undocustartup.com/tour. Again, www.undocustartup.com/tour. And I'll see you on the other side. Can somebody comment it on the chat if you know who this is? So this is David Dobrik. He's a DACA recipient, or he was a DACA recipient. He's now, I believe he fixed up his status now. But a content system, I define it as somebody trying to monetize content, right? So if you're a TikTok creator getting paid for his post, that's a content system. If you decide to launch a digital course and monetize that, that's also a content system. If you create a book and you sell it, that's a content system. You're making money from being an author. Right. And obviously, I don't have the time to go over all of this, but the last one I'll mention is applications. So I have been seeing this now as technology is growing with AI and everything. It's much easier to start creating applications, iOS applications, web applications. And that's also another aspect of entrepreneurship as well. But the biggest thing I want to challenge you now is I no longer want to call entrepreneurship just this. I started calling it something else. And my definition of it now is UndocuStartup. Because I felt like when I was a student, I was limited to what type of business I could actually create. People would tell me, just do independent contracting, just do side hustles. But to me, UndocuStartup means that you can actually think outside of that, think outside the box. There's other things that you can do. And really, there's no limits, right? And I've always told this to students that I work with, right? If, let's say, for example, one of the ideas that I personally had, right? Let's say I can't retire because I don't have a social security number. I can't invest in the stock market, or I can't do these things. Why don't I just build a company and then sell it for $500,000 and retire that way, right? Like that's another way to start thinking outside the box, right? And how do we start doing that? And that's why I call it UndocuStartup. So UndocuStartup is entrepreneurship without limits. And that's really what I try to share with all these other students as well. Okay. Now I'll show you some quick examples of some of the students that I've had the honor of working with. So you can see their businesses, get some ideas, and then I'll share a little bit more ideas on what our community is starting businesses in. All right. So I had a student in this college. She was actually interested in studying architecture, but she came into my program and she wanted to start a skincare product, and she was able to get her first 6 clients. And today she is selling at farmers markets. So again, ideation of just creating the skincare product all the way to now getting her permits and licenses to start selling at farmers market. That's a great way for you to get started. I had another student that was actually a nurse in Mexico when I connected with her. And she was telling me that she has all these skills, but obviously one of her problems was that a lot of the skills that she had in Mexico are not weighed the same here in the US. But she was going to community college to become a newborn care specialist and get all her certifications there because that's the closest thing to a nurse. And yeah, so she just takes care of newborn babies for older women, and she has that experience. And she was able to make $10,000 last year after getting our help. So again, that's connecting her skills to the business that she's doing. I had another student starting in accounting. That was his major. And it was actually surprising because he wanted to start an event rental photo booth business. He won first place in our pitch competition, and he made under $5,000 last year. So now ultimately he has this like machine that he can rent out to different businesses, charge $200 per hour, and he goes to events and he gets paid that way. Right. And his major is not in photography, right? So he's just doing accounting. So that's also another one. And then the last one that I'll mention is the student that was studying computer science. Initially, his idea was to do workshops for undocumented students, but then he shifted it as he went through our programs. He started doing website design for colleges and universities that did not have an Undocu Resources Center outside of California. And he was able to land his first $8 and $10,000 contracts with these universities as after our program. So again, really embodying this concept of UndocuStartup where, you're not just landing, you're not just creating businesses that give you $100, $200, but like, right, after you work with us and you get some knowledge, right, now you're able to start charging $8,000 to $10,000. So that's really what I want you guys to start thinking of. Let's just think bigger, and there's case studies out there. And he also didn't have DACA, so that's also another important thing. All right, but really, it's shifting. Okay, so not done. But here are other ideas that I'll mention. And this one is coming from internal data from this bootcamp tour that we're hosting at different states. So we're actually hosting them at 6 different states. But you can see that the major does matter a little bit, but these are other ideas that students are creating. So you can see that STEM majors tend to create product and tech-based solutions, or they want to build businesses. So you can see platforms, digital tech businesses, whereas people in marketing or business, they focus on creating branding ventures that are helping other businesses make more money, right? So these are just some other ideas that I also had that other students had in my programs, and I did also want to share it. So there's some correlation between your major and what you want to build a business in. Okay, so that's another one. So what's the biggest difference between doing this and being an employee? So there's a few differences, and I'm gonna sort of put it in this bracket. On the left hand side, I'm gonna have entrepreneurship, and on the right hand side, I'm gonna have employee. But when I mention entrepreneur, I am talking about freelancing. I'm talking about whether you're building an app. I'm talking about independent contracting. I'm gonna just use the word entrepreneur. All right. So let's look at some of the key differences on how they change. All right. So when it comes to services, as an employee, you can only do one service for one employee, right? When I was working in marketing, that was all I was focused on. I couldn't do anything else, just pure marketing, right? For the company. As an entrepreneur, you can create new services through your business, whether horizontally or vertically. So horizontally is like, let's say you have a marketing a marketing service. You can start a website design service, and that could be something you can add on. And you could even do workshops, right? So you're able to do that as an entrepreneur. You're not able to do that as an employee, right? Because you're tied to a contract. When it comes to income, as an employee, you get paid bi-weekly. You get paid maybe once, you get paid every week. And the money's consistent, right? You get paid whatever you're going to get paid, 2,000, 3,000 a month. And that's great. As an entrepreneur, and I'll tell you, right? Last year when I started doing this UndocuStartup venture full time, the first 3 months, there was zero income coming in. Then the fourth month, all right, I got some income. Fifth month, no income. 6th month, okay, some income. 7th month, no income, right? So it's not linear. So it could fluctuate. And you also have to send like an invoice. Up to this moment, I've been sending invoices to all my clients. And an invoice is just a document that says this is the service that I did and this is how much I'm getting paid. So that's in terms of income. It's a little bit different. All right. Now, when it comes to the onboarding process, as an employee, they had me fill out an I-9 form. This is just to verify that I am able to work. And I also had to provide a social security number, right? But as an entrepreneur, it kind of changes. So up to this point, because I work with universities, different organizations, I write an independent contractor agreement that says, okay, these are all the things that I'm going to do. I send a proposal. And I also have to fill out a W-9 form. So this form, if you do any type of independent contracting, there your client is going to ask you to fill out this form. And this form is just so you can the employer can send you a tax form at the end of the year. So you're able to do your taxes. And in order to fill this out, you need to have a valid I-10, a valid SSN, or a valid EIN. And I'll talk a little bit about this towards the end of the presentation. But the other thing I'll tell you is the bigger your clients, the more your clients pay you, the more the onboarding process is gonna have, right? So you may need different insurance, you may need to protect certain things, and that's also something that I've been learning as well. Okay. Work schedule. As an employee, you're working 9 to 5, right? An 8-hour day. As an entrepreneur, I like to say 24/7, but that's not true. You work a lot more, but you work on different things, right? So some days you may be focused on marketing. Other days you may be focused on selling. Other days, for me, I focus on just running my programs, right? But you're always thinking about your business all the time. So it never shuts off. As an employee, I remember when I would get home after 5 p.m., I don't have to think about my business. I mean, I don't have to think about my job, right? But as a business owner, you do have to think about those things as well. Right. Location, employee, you have one location where you can work. As an entrepreneur, I can go to any state tomorrow and work there. So that's another difference. Okay. Title and role. This is really what I think this is how you can distinguish whether someone is an entrepreneur or just an employee by the role. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're the founder, you're a co-founder, you're the CEO, maybe you're the managing partner. As an employee, you have a specific role in the company, like a marketing manager, a marketing director. All right. And then lastly, I also wanted to mention the taxes aspect. All right. So when you're an employee, you are given this form, a W-2, and this form just outlines how much the employer paid you. And when it comes to taxes, you pay approximately 7% of taxes as an employee. But when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you also receive a document. And remember, I mentioned this in the previous. So the reason why you fill this document out is so you can receive one of these at the end of the year. And this just says that a client paid you this amount of money, and then you can use this to pay your taxes. Now, the most important difference is that you are paying 15% more of taxes. So that means that out of a $10,000 contract, you're going to have to set aside $1,500. And that money, you don't touch it because you're going to pay that money when it comes time to do your taxes around March. And it really depends on your business structure. But these are the biggest differences. So if you're an entrepreneur, make sure you save 15, 20% of your taxes. My recommendation is to set up like a separate business bank account, put that 15% there, never touch it. So you have enough money to fund it. And then that's why some people fall behind on their taxes because they don't have the money. But that's another difference. All right. But the biggest thing that you want to keep in mind is that you're shifting this mindset. If you become an entrepreneur, if you decide to start your business, you're shifting this mindset from security at a job, from security of getting told what instructions, right? They're going to give you what to do. As an entrepreneur, you focus on not just surviving, but you're focusing on thriving, right? When I was in some of these programs, some of these students were making $10,000 a month. Some students were making $200,000 a month, right? And there's actual people that build those type of businesses, like influencers. They get paid millions of dollars. And they're not just surviving, they're thriving, right? So entrepreneurship really allows you to start thinking that way. And that's what I want to encourage you all to think about. Okay. So that's the biggest difference. So think bigger. I'll always say that. Okay. All right. So how do you start a business? Now I'm going to tell you how you can start your business in 6 steps, just based on what I've been able to help other undocumented students throughout these past about 2 years. All right. But I did want to start out with my story, right? Like, why did I start a business myself? I didn't start it because I wanted to make money. I started it because I fell under academic probation at 19 years old, and I needed to find a way to make $1,000, right? So academic probation, when you fall under a 2.0 GPA, and I needed $1,000 to pay for my physics class. Right. So what did I do? Right. I was like, how am I going to pay for my next physics class? I started asking myself, right? I come from a low income family. I can't just ask my parents, my family for money so I can pay this class. But I did know how to do one thing, and I knew how to take photos. So what did I do? I went on campus. I asked for help. I asked the Entrepreneurship Center at UCLA, what are the resources that you can provide me with so I can actually start freelancing? And I realized that there was a lot of resources. So that's always, I'll give you a quick tip. Like, if you're a student, there's always resources on campus around entrepreneurship. There's lawyers, there's attorneys. Feel free to connect with them with regards to any question, right? But the biggest thing that changed my life, I would say, in a way, was that this same lady that I had told about my status, that I had told her that I needed to, do this business. She sends me an email three months later, and she tells me, are you available to take photos of this event? Right. And she knew my status. And from there, I was like, well, I don't even know how she's going to pay me. Right. But she asked me this very important question. She's like, how much are you going to charge me? And at that time, I had never done it before, but I knew I needed $1,000, but I was okay with getting $600. So I told the lady, I've always said, like, fake it till you make it. So I said, hey, I've never done this. No, I told her, I normally do this for $800. But for you, I'll do it for $600. And I expected her to say no, right? I was 19, no DACA, whatever. I was kind of shy. And she ended up saying yes to me, right? So I photographed this event, and the way that she paid me was through a scholarship. She made a scholarship on campus, so I'm able to get it. And that's how I photographed this entrepreneurship event on campus. And you can see right here, I mean, this is like, I can technically say I'm a published photographer, but I used to go as Maya Films Photo and Video. But this event in itself also changed my life because I was in a room of all these students that didn't look like me. And I was expecting them to pitch, I want to build a coffee shop. I want to, build a mechanic shop. I was expecting them to say something like this, right? But when they went up there, they were like, I want to build the next Facebook, the next Twitter, the next Snapchat. And that inspired me. I was like, why doesn't my community think this way? Right. So not only was I getting paid, but I also heard like these students that their thinking was way bigger than I had initially thought. Right. But after that, then I ran into another problem. Right? Okay, you made $600. Cool, that's fine. But then I had a new problem. That event photography was not something that I could constantly get hired for down the line. So I had to find something that a lot more people needed. So I came up with headshot photography, and then from there, again, I didn't know what to do. And right here, I started asking, do I need an LLC? Do I need an ITIN number? But instead, I focused on just proving that enough people wanted what it was that I was building. So that brings me to step number 1 of starting your business. Just prove to yourself, not to anyone, just prove to yourself that people want this, right? And you don't have to get paid this very first time. I didn't get paid, right? But how did I prove it? I just created a free event on campus. I said, hey guys, I'm going to be doing free headshots. Come to this event. 6 students showed up. And even though I made no money, I was able to learn all these things: how to deliver the photos, how to work with shy clients, how to book clients, how to take photos, how to host an event. And all this gave me fuel to be like, okay, there's enough people that care about it to at least come to a free event. Now, what do I do after with all the photos that I had? So that brings me to step number 2. So once you prove that it works, a few people you do the service for, your next step is to show your work, right? Show credibility, show other people that you are the business that you're trying to create. So how did I do that? I just created a free portfolio on Adobe Portfolio. I'm not a coder. I didn't know how to create a website, but I just put all my images there. And I said, okay, if anybody asks me if I'm hosting this business, I mean, this is what I'm doing. right? So I use that, and I also use my social media account. So nowadays, I mean, there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Reddit, there's all these social media platforms that you can also use to your advantage to show other people your services, right? So back then, I was also doing like, getting a lot of likes. I had like some clout on social media, like 7,000 followers just through photography, and I wanted to use that to my advantage if I was actually gonna start this business, right? So step number one is to prove that it works. Step number two is to create something that you can show other people, and from there, your step number three, is to start getting paid. Can somebody pay you for this, right? So you saw your resources, try to make your first dollar, and that's what I did. I didn't have a lot of confidence in headshot photography, so I charged $15. And I ran an Instagram advertisement, and a student saw it. This was actually my first client. And I realized I was charging too little because the location was a good 30-minute drive, and I was spending more on gas than the amount of money that I was making. So, but nonetheless, this was my first client. One client turned into two clients. And eventually I got to the point where I got 64 total customers. And realistically, I didn't know anything much rather than do my service and get paid through Venmo. I was just getting all my payments through Venmo. And I went from charging $15 all the way to charging $700 per 1 hour, just doing graduation photos and headshots for other students. So I learned a lot. All right. And then from here, once I made some money, I made like around $10,000. Obviously, I invested most of it to my studies. But then I started asking, where do I see this in the next 6 months? So that would bring me to my next step. Think about, what is your goal in the next 6 months? Where do you want to take this? Right. And when I talk about a goal, I'm talking about a business goal. Right. Do you want to keep this as a side hustle, side income? Right. Do you want to be self-employed and maybe actually do it full time, start building it bigger, maybe become a business owner where you can hire other people, or maybe you want to get money from investors, right? And this goal is important because my goal was to become self-employed, right? My goal was to actually legalize this and make this much better. And then from there, by choosing your goal, it makes it really easy to legalize your business, because then you start thinking about, what is my business structure, right? And business structure, I'm sure you've heard about some of these terms. There's the sole proprietor, there's the LLC, there's the partnership, there's the corporation, right? And I'll go over them, but I do recommend you all to, obviously this is not legal advice, but I do recommend you all to, do your own research on every business structure. But I'll go over it really quickly. So the most common ones are these four. Now, the sole proprietor is the simplest one you can start, right? So ultimately, as long as you have an ITIN number and you get a business license and you get maybe a different name for your business, you are a sole proprietor. That's the simplest way. It costs less than $200 to set up. The only problem with it is that you and your business are the same person. So let's say you're in a risky business. Let's say you start a construction company and somebody falls down and they blame you and you get in trouble, legal trouble. Then that means that they are going to go against you and your business because you're the same person. So if you're in a high risk business, you may not want to have a sole proprietor, as a business structure. The next one is the LLC. This one is better because this one provides more protection. So the LLC, the difference between this and the sole proprietor is that now the LLC and you are different. So if anything happens with the LLC, I mean, it's not really going to affect you much because your LLC is its own thing. The downside of it is that every single year you do have to pay around $800 for to the state, so you're able to actually run your company. That's $800 whether you make money or not. Just think of it like a membership every single year, right? The partnership is like the sole proprietor, but now you're with another person. The good thing about it is you can share resources. The bad part about it is that, if any of you gets into trouble, I mean, you're all going to be into trouble as well. And now the corporation is the last one, but this one, you really, really only think about it if your goal is to raise money from investors, if your goal is to sell your company down the line, if your goal is to go public and sell at the public stock market, then you would want to set up a corporation as well. But this one, it has a lot more paperwork, and I have experience with like these three. So I have experience with the LLC, the corporation, and the sole proprietor. This one gives you a lot of headaches because there's a lot more regulations and you get taxed twice. So that's just from my experience. All right. Now, it's important for your goal because your goal is going to determine what business structure. So you can see if you want to get a startup, if you want to build a startup, then you're going to have to set up as a corporation because that's primarily the one that investors are going to invest in. Whereas a sole proprietor is good for a side hustle, right? So if you're just going to do like graphic design services, this is going to be good enough. All right. So again, it's important for you to just ask yourself, how far do I want to take this and where do I want to take this as well down the line? Okay. And then after this, you also have to get permission. So this is permission from the city, from the federal government. So these are your permits and licenses. And you also need to get a tax ID so you can pay your taxes. All right. Now, I did do some research and y'all are going to have access to this. So in any of these states, you're able to visit these websites. And right here is where you can find all your permits and licenses for any business. Again, I am focused in California right now, and I'm still researching, in other states, but feel free to check these states. Feel free to check out these websites and play around with them, try to find your permits and licenses, try to do a fictitious business and see like what are the different steps. But you're always going to need a business license. And if you sell anything physical, you're always going to need a seller's permit. And then obviously your certifications are also important as well. Okay. Now with that, you also want to think about applying for a tax ID, even though right now the times are difficult, given the whole political climate. It is nearly impossible for you to do business if you don't have a tax ID number, right? And so obviously there's the ITIN, the SSN, and the EIN. I'm sure you've heard of these two already, but the one specifically for business is the EIN. So this one stands for the Employer Identification Number. And you can apply for it for free, and it comes in a letter like this, all right? But you do need a valid SSN or an ITIN. Now, the benefits of having an EIN is that you can set up a business bank account. You can apply for business credit. And if you ever get a business grant, they're also going to ask you for an EIN or a place for you to receive the payments and whatnot. So, yeah, but this one's free to apply for. But, yeah, definitely consider talking to professionals if you're thinking of applying for an ITIN at the very beginning. All right. So let's do a quick recap as we're coming near the end of our presentation. So a quick recap: how do you start a business? Step number 1, prove that it works, right? Just do this service for a few people and don't be afraid of doing it for free. Because at the beginning, you're still just learning and you want to be open to any feedback that you receive. From there, once you prove that it works, you want to be able to show your work, create a portfolio, show other people what you've done. If it's something visual, if it's websites, whatever it is, show your work to other people. From there, it should be easy to get your first clients. From there, step number 4 is to start thinking about your goal. And once you identify your goal, then you can really focus on legalizing your business. You can focus on legalizing your business towards step number 5 and step number 6. Now, the reason why I always show it this way instead of legalizing your business, then getting your clients, is that legalizing your business with $1,000, you can solve it, but you have a business if you get clients and you get sales. You don't want to have a legalized business, but you're not getting any clients or sales to be able to sustain it, right? So don't spend a lot of time legalizing your business. Focus more on the ideation, focus more on getting clients, focus more on putting your name out there to make it sustainable down the line. Okay.
Welcome to UndocuStartup by Juan Maya Hernandez.